When I saw the charge of $250,000 on my business's account 3 days before Christmas, I thought it was a bank error. But when I found out that my own daughter had used that money to send her in-laws on a luxurious European vacation, all while calling me stingy, I knew my life had just changed forever. Before I continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell because we publish new stories every day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city and country you're watching from. My name is Elia Eli Hayes. I'm 64 years old, and over the past 3 decades, I built everything I have with these hands that are now shaking as I write. I am a management consultant, or rather, I was until recently. I founded my own firm back in 1992. I worked 16 hours a day for years. I sacrificed vacations, friendships, and opportunities abroad. All for one reason: to give my daughter, Naomi, the life her mother would have wanted her to have. December 19th, 2024. Started like any other Thursday. I woke up at 6 in the morning in my condo in Midtown Atlanta. I made a black coffee, just like always, and checked work emails. At 9:15, my phone buzzed with a notification from my bank, Bank of America. Alert: unusual transaction on your business account. Auxiliary card number 4B0T6. At first, I thought it was spam or some kind of system glitch. I have alerts set up for any expenditure over $6,000 on that account because I use it exclusively for firm expenses. But this notification was different. 3 transactions in less than 24 hours, $80,000, $85,000, and another $85,000, a total of $250,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. I immediately called the bank, hoping they would confirm it was fraud, identity theft, anything but the truth I was about to discover. The operator, a young woman with a professional tone, reviewed the transactions for 5 eternal minutes. Mr. Hayes, the transactions were made with the auxiliary card registered in the name of Naomi Hayes. 2 charges to Emirates Airlines for first-class tickets to Paris, and 1 to the Ritz-Carlton for hotel reservations. All authorized with the correct PIN code. Naomi, my daughter, Naomi. The girl I raised alone since she was 11 years old after cancer took her mother, Lena. The young woman to whom I gave everything, in my power and beyond. There must be a mistake, I murmured into the phone, though I already knew there wasn't. Can you give me the exact details of the reservations? The operator hesitated for a second. Sir, due to data protection, I can only confirm that the tickets are for 4 people, departing December 22nd and returning January 5th. The names of the passengers are Wallace Miller, Veronica Miller, and 2 other accompanying guests. Wally and Veronica Miller, Naomi's in-laws, Jackson's parents, people I had met maybe 5 times in the 6 years they had been married. Always distant, always sizing me up with that look that clearly said I would never be good enough for their social circle. I hung up the phone and stayed seated on my living room sofa for I don't know how long. The hands on the wall clock that Lena bought on our trip to Savannah in 1998 kept moving, but I was paralyzed. I had given Naomi that auxiliary card in 2019, right after her wedding, with a clear and specific instruction. Only for family emergencies, honey, if you ever need something urgent, and I'm unavailable. She had nodded, hugged me, and promised to use it responsibly. For 5 years, there was never a single charge. I trusted her completely. And now, this $250,000. She hadn't called me, hadn't asked permission, hadn't consulted me. She simply took the money as if it were hers by right, as if I were an ATM without feelings or opinions. I forced myself to stand up, walk to my desk, and turn on the computer. I needed to see the full statements to understand exactly what had happened. While waiting for the banking system to load, my mind started connecting details I had ignored for months. Naomi's calls getting shorter and colder. The constant excuses not to come for Sunday dinner like we used to. The way Jackson always found reasons for us to meet at expensive Buckhead restaurants, where I'd end up paying $400 or $550 checks. The glances they exchanged when I talked about working double shifts to pay for her college. The statement finally appeared on the screen, and there it all was, documented with the cruel precision of digital numbers. First transaction on December 17th at 11:32 in the morning, $80,000 to Emirates Airlines, and 2 first-class tickets, Atlanta to Paris. Second transaction that same day at 3:40, $85,000 to Emirates Airlines. 2 more first-class tickets. Third transaction on December 18th, $85,000 to the Ritz-Carlton Paris. Presidential Suite, 18 nights. Naomi had strategically divided the purchases to prevent the bank from automatically blocking the card for suspicious activity. Any charge over $125,000 required additional phone authorization. She knew that. She had planned this. I spent the night of December 19th without sleep, staring at my bedroom ceiling, mentally rehearsing how I would address this situation. Part of me wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation, that Naomi would call any moment, apologizing for the misunderstanding. But the phone never rang. At 8 o'clock in the morning on December 20th, I grabbed my car keys and drove to the Buckhead neighborhood, where Naomi and Jackson live in a 1,200 square foot condo I helped them secure. I paid the $100,000 down payment in 2019 as a wedding gift. They only covered the monthly mortgage of $1,500, which, compared to Atlanta prices, was practically a steal. I rang the doorbell 3 times before Jackson opened the door. He was wearing an expensive navy blue silk robe and leather slippers. He looked at me with that annoyed expression he had perfected over the years. "Eli, it's 8 in the morning. What are you doing here so early?" "I need to talk to Naomi. Now." Something in my tone must have warned him that this was no time for games, because he stepped aside without arguing. I walked straight into the living room where Naomi was sitting on the sofa, drinking coffee, dressed in white satin pajamas that I immediately recognized because I had given her $200 to buy them last year. "Dad," she said without getting up, without even looking surprised to see me. "Did something happen?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen with the bank statement. $250,000, Naomi. On my business card, the card I gave you for emergencies. There was a thick silence that seemed to last forever. Naomi placed her coffee cup on the table with a slow, deliberate movement. When she finally looked at me, there was no guilt in her eyes, no remorse, only something cold and distant that I had never seen before in my own daughter. "Wally and Veronica deserved that vacation," she said in a voice so calm it chilled my blood. "They've worked their whole lives. They've never been out of the country. Jackson and I wanted to give them something special for Christmas. And it didn't occur to you to ask me for permission?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "It didn't occur to you to at least call me and consult before using $250,000 from my account?" Jackson approached and stood next to Naomi in a gesture of solidarity that hurt more than any word. Eli, you've always been very controlling with your money. Naomi knew you'd say no. Controlling. I repeated the word as if it were foreign in my mouth. Controlling for expecting my daughter to ask permission before spending the equivalent of 3 years' salary for most Americans? Naomi stood up from the couch with measured movements. Dad, they are my real family now. Wally and Veronica have welcomed me like a true daughter. They invite me to their gatherings, introduce me to their important friends, and make me feel valued. Every word was a stab. Your real family? I whispered. Naomi, I raised you alone since you were 11. Yes, you raised me, she interrupted in a tone she had never used with me before. But you were never really present, were you? Always working? Always busy? Always with your meetings and clients? The Millers have time for me. Veronica calls me 3 times a week. Wally asks about my day. They really care. I felt the ground shift under my feet. I worked 16 hours a day to give you the life your mother would have wanted you to have, to pay for the private Atlanta Academy, for you to study business administration at Emory University, so you wouldn't lack for anything. I know, Naomi said, with a sigh of exasperation. And you always remind me, at every dinner, on every call. I worked so hard for you. I sacrificed so much. I gave you everything. It's exhausting, Dad. Jackson placed his hand on Naomi's shoulder. Look, Eli, we understand you're upset, but the tickets are already bought. The reservations are confirmed. Wally and Veronica leave the day after tomorrow, and we can't cancel now without looking bad. Looking bad? And the laugh that came out of my throat sounded hollow even to me. You care about looking bad to your in-laws, but you don't care about robbing me? It's not stealing, Naomi retorted coolly. It's a card you gave me. Technically, I had authorization to use it. For emergencies, Naomi, that was the condition. A family emergency. This is a family emergency, Jackson argued with a twisted logic that left me breathless. The emergency is that my parents have never traveled abroad, and they deserve to see Paris before they get too old. I just stared at these 2 people who were supposed to be my family. Naomi, the little girl who used to climb into my lap every night asking me to read her stories. Jackson, the man who had promised me at their wedding that he would take care of my daughter and make her happy. And there they were, justifying a $250,000 theft as if they were doing me a favor. They deserve the best, Naomi added, crossing her arms. Unlike you, who was always stingy with everything, except when you could show off in front of others. Wally and Veronica are genuinely generous. They don't put conditions on their love. That last sentence was the one that broke me inside. They don't put conditions on their love. As if I had conditioned mine, as if every extra hour, worked every canceled vacation, every rejected opportunity to be at her piano recitals hadn't been pure, unconditional love. I understand, I finally said, my voice sounding strangely calm, even to myself. I understand perfectly. I turned and walked toward the door. Naomi called out once, Dad, don't be dramatic. But I didn't stop. I took the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. I needed to move. I needed to get out of that place where everything I had built for 30 years had just turned to ash. When I reached my SUV, I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. For the first time since Lena died in 2003, I allowed the tears to run freely down my face. I cried for the girl I had lost. I cried for the years invested. I cried for the man I was, who believed that love and sacrifice would be enough. But as I cried, something else was being born inside me. It wasn't just pain, it was clarity. A cold, crystalline clarity that told me exactly what I had to do. Next, I drove back to my condo in Midtown, barely remembering how I got there. I parked the car, went up to the 5th floor, and closed the door behind me. And I simply collapsed onto the armchair where Lena used to sit and knit while we watched movies on Friday nights. The rage was gone. The initial shock had disappeared. What remained was a void so deep I could barely breathe. I got up like an automaton and walked to the hallway closet, where I kept boxes of photographs and documents I hadn't reviewed in years. I needed to remember. I needed to understand when everything went wrong. I opened the first box, and there it was. The blue photo album Lena had started when Naomi was born in 1992. The first pages showed a tiny baby wrapped in white blankets from Grady Memorial Hospital. Lena holding Naomi with that radiant smile that lit up any room. Me, 25 years younger, with completely black hair and none of the gray that now dominated my temples, looking at my newborn daughter as if she were the greatest miracle in the universe. And she was. For 11 years, we were a complete family. Lena worked as a teacher at a local elementary school in Midtown. I was building my consulting firm from scratch, working from our dining room because we couldn't afford an office yet. We were happy with little. Vacations in Tybee Island, Georgia. Instead of exotic destinations, home-cooked dinners instead of restaurants. But there was love, so much love. I turned the pages slowly. Naomi at 2 on her first day of daycare. Naomi at 4 dressed as a princess for Halloween. Naomi at 7, losing her first tooth. Naomi at 9 at her first piano lesson, sitting in front of the keyboard with an expression of absolute concentration. Then I reached the photos from 2003, and my heart squeezed. Lena, in the hospital, thin, pale, smiling bravely for the camera, while Naomi held her hand. The pancreatic cancer had appeared out of nowhere in February. By July, she was gone. I remember that funeral as if it were yesterday. July 23rd, 2003, Oakland Cemetery, Atlanta. 107 degrees of suffocating heat. Naomi crying, clinging to my black suit while I tried to hold myself together for her. Lena was only 36. Naomi was only 11. I took out another box, this one full of receipts and documents I had meticulously saved for years. Bills from the Atlanta Academy. $12,000 annually. For 7 years. Receipts for private math tutoring. When Naomi struggled with algebra. $80 weekly for 2 years. Proof of piano classes at the Atlanta Conservatory of Music. $300 monthly for 8 years. Every piece of paper was evidence of a decision I made. After losing Lena, I could have sent Naomi to a public school, saved that money for myself, taken the easy way out. But I didn't. Lena had wanted the best for our daughter, and I was going to make sure she had it, even if it killed me trying. And it almost did. I found my 2004 planner, the year after Lena's death. I had noted every commitment, every meeting, every event. Wake up at 5:30 in the morning, make Naomi's breakfast, take her to school at 8, work with clients from 9 to 2, pick up Naomi at 2:30, lunch together, take her to piano, or her friend Chelsea's house, go back to work from 5 to 11 at night, get home, check that Naomi had done her homework, put her to bed, and then work until 1 in the morning on proposals and projects. I repeated that brutal routine for years. Weekends were not rest. They were time to be with Naomi. Parks, movies, the beach, museums. I tried to be father and mother simultaneously, knowing it would never be enough but praying it would be something. I found a photo of Naomi's high school graduation in 2010. Her in her cap and gown, smiling broadly. Me standing next to her, clearly exhausted but proud. That night she had told me, "Thank you, Dad, for everything. I know it's been hard." I hugged her for 5 full minutes, crying on her shoulder, finally feeling validated. Where had that girl gone? When did she transform into the cold woman who, this morning, told me the Millers were her real family? I kept searching through the papers. Lease agreement for the New York City apartment. I got her when she was accepted to Emory in 2011, $1,400 a month, which I paid in full. University tuition, $35,000 annually for 4 years. Graduation trip to Prague with her classmates in 2014, $3,500, which I gave her without a second thought. In 2015, Naomi met Jackson at a business conference. He worked at his father's financial consulting firm. He was handsome, self-assured. He came from a wealthy Buckhead family. At first, I liked him. He seemed to treat her with respect, to make her happy. The first time I met Wallace and Veronica Miller was at a formal dinner at their house in 2017. They lived in a 3-story mansion with a private garden. Wally was a retired bank executive. Veronica had never worked. She devoted her time to charity work and social clubs. Throughout the dinner, they evaluated me with critical glances, asking veiled questions about my income, my education, my connections. "So, Eli," Veronica asked, in a tone that dripped with superiority, "you went to a state school? How admirable. Working-class people who pull themselves up always have my respect." Owen and Naomi married in June 2019. I paid $1,000 for that wedding at the St. Regis Atlanta. 300 guests, most of them Miller friends I didn't know. Live orchestra, 5-course menu, open champagne bar. Naomi had specifically asked me not to spare any expense because she wanted to impress Jackson's family. I gave a speech that night. I spoke about Lena, how proud she would be to see our daughter grown into a beautiful, successful woman. I talked about the difficult years, how Naomi had been my strength to keep going. I ended by saying, "Naomi, you are my greatest achievement. I love you more than anything in this world." People applauded. Naomi cried. Jackson gave me an awkward hug. But Wally and Veronica remained seated, exchanging glances that I couldn't decipher then, but that I understood perfectly now. Contempt. I closed the albums and the boxes. The December sun streamed through the window, casting long shadows on the hardwood floor. I looked at the clock. 3 o'clock in the afternoon on December 20th. I had spent 32 years of my life building a relationship with my daughter. 32 years of sacrifice, unconditional love, constant presence despite what she claimed. And in a single morning, that daughter had told me I had never been her real family. I got up from the floor where I had been sitting, surrounded by memories, and walked to my desk. It was time to stop crying over the past and start planning the future. On Monday, December 21st, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in months. I picked up the phone at 7 in the morning and dialed a number I had known by heart for 40 years. "Walter Jenkins' office. Good morning," the familiar voice answered on the third ring. "Wally, it's Eli. I need to see you today." "It's urgent." Walter Jenkins had been my accountant when I opened the consultancy in 1992. Over time, he became an attorney as well, specializing in commercial and family law. But more than that, he was probably the only person in Atlanta I could call a true friend. He had been at my wedding, at Lena's funeral, at every important moment of my adult existence. What happened, Eli? Your voice sounds terrible. I'd rather explain it in person. Do you have time this morning? There was a brief pause. I have a meeting at 9, but I can cancel it. Come to my office at 8:30. Wally's office was on Peachtree Street, in a restored modernist building with high ceilings and windows overlooking Atlanta's most elegant avenue. I arrived punctually, carrying a folder with all the bank statements I had printed the night before. Wally met me personally at the entrance. He was 67, with completely white hair, gold-rimmed glasses, and that air of quiet dignity that only comes with decades of experience. He studied me with those gray eyes that missed nothing. "You look rough," he said flatly. "When was the last time you slept well?" "2 nights ago, before discovering my daughter stole $250,000 from me." His expression changed immediately. "Sit down. Tell me everything." I recounted the entire story, the bank notification, the transactions for the Millers, the confrontation with Naomi, her words about her real family. Wally listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes in his leather notebook. When I finished, he leaned back in his executive chair and exhaled slowly. "Eli, this is misuse of funds. Technically, Naomi had authorized access to the card, but the use clearly exceeds the purpose for which it was granted. We could press criminal charges." "I don't want to destroy my daughter," I said automatically, although part of me was no longer so sure of that statement. "I just want to understand the full magnitude of what she has done." Wally nodded. "Then let's do a full audit. Give me access to all your accounts linked to Naomi, and let's review exactly how much she's spent and when this pattern began." We spent the next 4 hours locked in his office. Wally had specialized software for forensic financial analysis. He entered my bank credentials and began tracking every transaction linked to Naomi's auxiliary card since I gave it to her in June 2019. What we discovered chilled my blood. "Look at this," Wally said, pointing to his computer screen. "The first 5 years, there were no charges. Absolutely nothing. From June 2019 to February 2024. But then, look." A timeline appeared on the screen with red dots marking transactions. The first red dot was March 3rd, 2024. $65,000 to a construction and remodeling company in Buckhead. "Remodeling?" I asked, confused. "Naomi never mentioned remodeling their condo." Now Wally clicked on the transaction detail. It wasn't their condo. According to the billing address, it was on Pearson Street, number 23. Does that ring a bell? I felt my stomach churn. That's Wallace and Veronica Miller's address. Wally continued scrolling through the transactions. April 15th, 2024. $45,000 to a Mercedes-Benz dealership in Sandy Springs. Attached was a photo of the vehicle, a metallic black Mercedes E-Class. "Naomi doesn't drive a Mercedes," I murmured. "She has a Honda Accord I bought her in 2020. "Exactly," Wally confirmed. "This isn't for her either." But it didn't end there. Starting in May, there was a consistent monthly pattern. $4,000 here, $6,500 there, $5,500 somewhere else. Expensive Buckhead restaurants, designer clothing stores, jewelry shops. A particularly painful $10,000 transaction in September to a specialized premium French wine retailer. "All charged to your card," Wally said in a grave voice, "all while you had no idea." He ran the total calculations on an Excel sheet. The final figure appeared in the bottom right corner of the screen. $330,000. $330,000 in less than 10 months. $80,000 more than I had initially calculated. Naomi hadn't just paid for the luxury vacation to Paris. She had been funding the Millers' entire lifestyle for almost a year. How didn't I notice sooner? I asked out loud, feeling a mixture of rage and shame. How did I overlook this for months? Wally closed the laptop and looked at me with a compassionate expression. Eli, that business account moves hundreds of thousands of dollars monthly. Expenses of $4,000 or $6,000 are easily lost among vendor invoices, payroll, services. Naomi knew exactly what she was doing. The amounts were small enough to go unnoticed, but large enough to keep the Millers living comfortably. I ran my hands over my face, feeling the weight of every one of my 64 years. So, it wasn't impulsive. It was systematic, completely planned. Confirmed, Wally said. Look at the patterns. Always around the 15th of the month, $4,000 to $6,000 like a salary. The large expenses, the remodeling and the vehicle, she made in months when your account had more movement due to big projects. April and March are traditionally your strongest months. He was right. Naomi knew my business almost as well as I did. For years, I had explained cash flow, peak seasons, and financial management to her. I thought I was educating her, preparing her to be independent. Instead, I had given her the exact tools to steal from me efficiently. Wally took a new folder from his desk. We have several legal options. We can file a complaint for misuse of funds, demand full restitution with interest, and even seek criminal charges that could result in jail time. Jail. The word sounded strange in my mouth. It's a real possibility, Eli. We're talking about over $1/3 million. That's not a misunderstanding, it's sustained fraud. I stared out the window onto Peachtree Street. Outside, people were walking with Christmas shopping bags, enjoying the festive atmosphere. Couples holding hands, families with excited children. A world that seemed alien to the collapse of my own reality. I don't want her to go to jail, I said finally. But I also can't just ignore this and move on as if nothing happened. Wally nodded slowly. Then there's another route. One that protects you without necessarily destroying her, although it will have permanent consequences. Are you ready to hear it? I looked him directly in the eyes. Tell me what I have to do. Wally got up from his desk and walked out to an antique dark wood filing cabinet. He pulled out several forms and documents, placing them in front of me with the precision of a surgeon preparing instruments. Comprehensive asset protection, he began to explain. First, we immediately cancel all cards linked to your name that Naomi can use. Second, we remove her as a beneficiary from any life insurance, bank account, or investment where she is listed. Third, we modify your will to ensure your estate goes exactly where you decide. I listened to every word, feeling something fundamental change inside me. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was something deeper and definitive, the recovery of my own autonomy. How long will all this take to execute? I asked. If we act now, I can have the bank cancellations ready in 24 hours. The testamentary modification requires an appointment with a notary, but I know Mr. Robert Evans from college. I can get you space for December 27th. Do it, I replied without hesitation. Everything. Today. Wally began making calls while I signed authorizations. Well, first call to Bank of America, where I spoke directly with the corporate account manager. I explained that I needed to cancel auxiliary card number 4B0T6 due to unauthorized use. The manager, a man named Marcus Green, who had handled my account for 15 years, didn't ask unnecessary questions. Mr. Hayes, I am proceeding with the immediate cancellation. The card will be inactive in the next 30 minutes. Do you also want to review the limits and authorizations of other accounts?
Yes, any account where Naomi Hayes appears as authorized or beneficiary. I want complete documentation. Marcus took 10 minutes to review the system. You have 4 accounts where your daughter is listed. The business account we already mentioned, a joint savings account opened in 2006, a certificate of deposit for $170,000 where she is a secondary beneficiary, and an index fund investment account. Every word was a reminder of how much I had trusted Naomi. I opened the joint savings account when she was 14, thinking it would be educational to teach her about personal finance. The CD was my emergency fund, the investment account, my future retirement. Remove her from all of them, I ordered in a firm voice. Absolutely all of them. And send me written confirmation of each modification. While the bank processed the changes, Wally contacted the insurance companies. I had 2 major life policies, one for $400,000 with State Farm and one for $700,000 with Allstate. In both, Naomi was listed as the sole beneficiary since she turned 18. The conversation with the State Farm agent was particularly revealing. Mr. Hayes, changing beneficiaries is your absolute right, but I must ask, are you sure? Your daughter has been the beneficiary for 14 years. It's a significant change. Completely sure, I replied. In fact, I want to designate new beneficiaries right now. I had thought about this on the way to Wally's office. If something happened to me, my estate would not go to fund more luxury vacations for the Millers. It would go to places where it truly mattered. The Widowed Parent Support Network as the primary beneficiary for 70%, and the remaining 30% for the Lena Hayes Memorial Scholarship Fund, a program that helps orphaned students. The agent was silent for a few seconds. Those are excellent organizations, Mr. Hayes. I will process the changes today. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon when we finished with the financial institutions. Wally ordered food from a nearby restaurant, but I could barely eat. Adrenaline kept me running, but I knew that exhaustion would eventually arrive. There's one more thing you should consider, Wally said, reviewing his notes. The condo where Naomi and Jackson live. You said you paid the $100,000 down payment as a wedding gift. Whose name is on the deed? I had to think for a moment. Naomi and Jackson, 50% co-owners each. I only provided the initial money. Wally nodded. Then legally, you have no claim to that property. The money was a gift, not a loan. There's no way to recover it. That information should have bothered me, but curiously, I felt nothing. $100,000 6 years ago, when I still believed I was investing in my daughter's happiness. Now I knew I had been buying illusions. What about the monthly financial support? I suddenly asked. For years, I've transferred money to Naomi for miscellaneous expenses. Wally checked the statements we had printed. I see regular transfers, $20,000 a month since July 2019. You never signed any document formalizing this as a permanent obligation, did you? No. I just did it because I thought they needed it while establishing their life together. Then you can stop it whenever you want. There's no contract, no legal obligation. $20,000 a month for 5.5 years. $1.32 million in total. Almost $1.5 million that Naomi had received without even asking, because I assumed it was my duty as a father to keep providing. Cancel the automatic transfer, I said, starting in January, nothing more. Wally took notes and then looked at me with a serious expression. Eli, all of this is going to have immediate consequences for Naomi. When she finds out she has no access to the cards, the accounts, the insurance, the monthly transfers, it's going to completely collapse their financial situation. I know. Are you prepared for that? For the calls, the messages, maybe even her showing up at your door? I thought of 11-year-old Naomi crying at her mother's funeral. I thought of 17-year-old Naomi graduating with honors. I thought of 27-year-old Naomi walking toward the altar. And then I thought of 32-year-old Naomi looking at me coldly, saying the Millers were her real family. "I'm prepared," I replied, with a certainty that surprised even me. Wally closed his folder. "Then there's one last thing you need to do, something just for you, unrelated to Naomi or the money or the legal consequences." I looked at him questioningly. "You need to think about your own life, Eli. You've spent 32 years living exclusively for your daughter. What are you going to do now for yourself?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. What was I going to do for myself? I was 64, in good health, with a successful firm that practically managed itself thanks to my competent team. For the first time in decades, I had no immediate family obligations. "I don't know," I admitted quietly. "Then figure it out," Wally said with a small smile. "Because this isn't just cutting ties with Naomi. It's reclaiming your own existence." That night, back in my condo, I didn't open photo albums or review documents from the past. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for something I had vaguely considered for years, but never had the courage to pursue: international volunteer programs for retired professionals. I found dozens of options: teaching English in Thailand, business consulting for entrepreneurs in Vietnam, community construction projects in Cambodia. Each description opened a window to a completely different life. I renewed my passport online that same night, paying the urgent fee. It would be ready in 5 days. Then, almost without thinking, I looked up flights to Bangkok. There was one available on January 15th. One way, economy class, $840. I moved the cursor over the purchase button and stared at it for 5 full minutes. This was the moment, the decision that would definitively change everything. I clicked. The next 2 days passed in a strange calm. I didn't receive calls from Naomi. No messages, no sign that she had noticed the changes I had implemented. Wally assured me that all cancellations had been active since 8 o'clock in the morning on December 22nd. The cards were dead, the accounts blocked, the automatic transfers suspended. It was only a matter of time. On December 23rd, at 9:15 at night, my phone exploded with calls. First call, Naomi. I rejected it. Second call, 30 seconds later. Naomi again? Rejected. Third, fourth, fifth call within 3 minutes. All rejected. Then the text messages arrived. 15 in total, each more desperate than the last. Dad? Answer, please. I need to talk to you urgently. The cards aren't working. I'm at the restaurant, and none of them are going through. You're humiliating me on purpose. Answer now. I placed the phone on the table and calmly continued eating my bowl of homemade chicken and vegetable soup. I had expected this moment for 3 days. I knew exactly what was happening and where. Naomi had reserved a table at the Capitol Grill in Buckhead, one of the most exclusive and expensive restaurants, to celebrate an early Christmas Eve with the Millers. 20 people. Wally, Veronica, Jackson, Jackson's siblings, cousins, aunts, and uncles. An anticipated celebration before the in-laws left for Paris the next day. Naturally, Naomi had assumed she would pay with the cards, linked to my account. She had probably bragged to Veronica about how generous the dinner would be, the best of the menu, premium wines, special desserts, all to impress her real family. And now, all the cards were being declined in front of 20 witnesses. The sixth call came at 9:32. This time, I answered, put it on speakerphone, and left the phone on the table while I continued eating. Dad? Naomi's voice was pure panic. What did you do? The cards don't work. None of the 5 of them. I'm here with Jackson's whole family, and the waiter says they're all canceled. I finished chewing before responding. My voice came out calm, almost monotone. I canceled them last Monday, Naomi. All of them. There was an astonished silence on the other end of the line. I could hear background voices murmuring, the clinking of glasses. You canceled them? Why would you do something like that without telling me? Why tell you? I replied with a question. You didn't tell me when you spent $250,000 on a vacation for the Millers. I thought we were following the same communication protocol. Dad, this is different. I'm here with Wally and Veronica and their entire family. The bill is $5,500. You're making me look like a liar. I took a sip of water. I'm not making you look like anything, daughter. You decided to reserve a $5,500 dinner, assuming I would pay for it. That was your decision, not mine. I don't have $5,500. Jackson doesn't either. You're going to humiliate us in front of everyone. Then I suggest you call your real family, I said with a calm that surprised even myself. Wally and Veronica, the people who, according to you, value you more than I do. I'm sure they'll be delighted to pay for their own celebration dinner. I heard Naomi gasp. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. In fact, Naomi, this is just the beginning. You chose your real family 4 days ago in your living room. You said the Millers are the ones who truly matter to you, who make you feel valued. So now they can take care of you. I am completely freeing you from me. What does that mean? Her voice went up an octave. Freeing you from me means exactly what it sounds like. No cards, no access to accounts, no monthly transfers, no insurance in your name, nothing. You are officially independent of this absent and controlling father who is never present. I could hear her breathing raggedly. Dad, you can't do this. How are we going to pay for the condo? The private school you promised for when we have children? The monthly expenses? You'll have to figure that out yourselves. Or better yet, ask Wally and Veronica. Surely, after all the gifts you've given them with my money, they'll be happy to return the favor. There was a confused noise, voices rising in the background. Jackson took the phone. Eli, this is ridiculous. You can't just cut everything off like this. Naomi is your daughter. Naomi told me 4 days ago that I'm not her real family, I replied, with a voice of steel. And you know what, Jackson? She's right. Real family doesn't steal. Real family doesn't lie. Real family doesn't spend over $350,000 behind your back and then call you stingy when you confront them. $350,000? Jackson sounded genuinely confused. What are you talking about? Ask your wife. Ask her about the $65,000 for remodeling your parents' house, the $45,000 for the Mercedes, the thousands monthly for 10 months. It's all documented. Every dollar. Absolute silence. Then Naomi took the phone again. Her voice was now mixed with sobs. Dad, please, I beg you, don't do this here. Not now. We can talk tomorrow. We can fix this, but please, reactivate at least one card so we can pay for this dinner. Please. Dad, you said they deserve the best, Naomi. That they are your real family. Then prove it and make them pay for the best. Or better yet, face the consequences of your own decisions for the first time in your life. They're going to report us for fraud if we leave without paying, Naomi whispered, terrified. Then I suggest someone finds $5,500 quickly. You have your own cards, right? The ones you and Jackson have from your jobs? Another silence. They have $100 limits each. It's not enough. What a shame. Goodbye, Naomi. Wait, don't hang up. Dad, please listen to me. I hung up. I turned off the phone completely, got up from the table, washed my plate, dried it, put it away. Then I made some chamomile tea and sat on the balcony, looking at the Christmas lights of Atlanta. I imagined the scene at the restaurant, Naomi crying, Jackson frantically calling his bank trying to increase credit limits, Wally and Veronica mentally calculating if they had enough cash between them, the other guests whispering, judging, wondering what kind of financial disaster had occurred. The humiliation Naomi felt at that moment was a tiny fraction of what I had felt when I discovered her betrayal. But I felt no satisfaction. I felt no victory. I only felt a door closing definitively, somewhere deep in my chest. At 11 o'clock that night, I briefly turned on the phone. I had 53 messages and 18 missed calls. I didn't read any of them. I simply verified that my alarm was set for 6 in the morning. Tomorrow was December 24th, Christmas Eve, and I had an important appointment with the notary on the 27th. There was still a lot to do. I spent December 24th, 25th, and 26th in deliberate silence. I turned off my phone completely and devoted myself to simple tasks, cleaning the condo thoroughly, organizing documents, donating clothes I hadn't worn in years. Every item that left my life was like shedding weight. The morning of December 27th, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced since before Lena's death. The sky was clear, one of those winter days in Atlanta where the sun shines with deceptive strength that doesn't really warm. I dressed in my best dark gray suit, the same one I had worn for Naomi's wedding, but which I now wore with a completely different purpose. Mr. Robert Evans's notary office was located on a quiet street in the Old Fourth Ward, in a 19th century building with solid wood doors and mosaic tile floors. Robert and Wally had studied law together at Emory University in the 70s. Now, at 68, Robert was one of the most respected notaries in Georgia. He received me personally in his office, lined with bookshelves full of leather-bound legal codes. He was a tall, thin man with a perfectly trimmed white beard and manners reminiscent of a more formal era. "Eli," he said, shaking my hand firmly. Wally explained the general situation. "I'm very sorry for what you're going through." "Thank you, Robert. I appreciate you making space at this time of year. For important cases, there's always space." He sat behind his antique desk and opened a thick folder. "Wally prepared the draft of the will according to your instructions. Before proceeding, I need to confirm some fundamental details." I nodded, settling into the high-backed chair across from him. "Your estimated total net worth is approximately $1.3 million, Robert began, reading from the document. "This includes your condo in Midtown valued at $500,000, your bank accounts at $310,000, investments at $390,000, and your stake in the consulting firm valued at $70,000 after debts and obligations." Every figure represented decades of work, every dollar earned with effort, sacrifice, sleepless nights, and lost weekends. And now, I was consciously deciding that none of it would go to Naomi. "Correct," I confirmed with a steady voice. "You propose to designate the two charitable organizations as primary beneficiaries. And the 70%, an equivalent to $910,000, for the Widowed Parent Support Network, and 30%, $390,000, for the Lena Hayes Memorial Scholarship Fund at Emory University. I had personally chosen the name of the scholarship program. Lina had been a teacher for 13 years. Educating vulnerable children had been her passion. What better way to honor her memory than by helping orphaned students gain a college education they couldn't otherwise afford? That's right, I replied, feeling a strange peace. Robert turned the page. Regarding your daughter, Naomi Hayes, you propose to leave her only objects without significant monetary value. Specifically, the wristwatch that belonged to her mother, Lena, the family photo albums, and Lena's personal jewelry stored in your safe deposit box. I paused at that point. Lena's jewelry, her engagement ring with a small diamond I bought by saving for 6 months, her pearl earrings she inherited from her grandmother, the silver necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary, priceless, sentimental value, monetary value, maybe $14,000 in total. Yes, I murmured. Those things belong to her by right. They are memories of her mother. I would never take that away from her. Robert looked at me over his reading glasses. Eli, do you understand that this will effectively remove your only daughter from any patrimonial inheritance? If at any point you change your mind— I won't change it, I interrupted gently but firmly. Robert, my daughter told me I am not her real family. She stole $330,000 from me over 10 months to finance the lifestyle of people she appreciates more than me. She used my trust as a weapon against me. I am not punishing her on a whim. I am protecting what I built over 40 years so that it goes to causes that will truly value it. Robert nodded slowly. Very well, then let's proceed with the signing. The process took 40 minutes. Robert read the entire will aloud, every clause, every specification. 2 notary witnesses came in to witness the signing. An older woman who worked as a legal secretary, and a young man who was a law intern. Both watched as I signed 3 copies of the document with permanent blue ink. When the last signature was complete, Robert stamped each copy with the official notary seal. The sound of the seal hitting the paper resonated in the silent offices with a finality that made me shudder. Done, Robert announced. This will is officially registered. 1 copy remains in the notary files, another goes to the central registry, and the 3rd is yours. In the event of your death, the designated executors will carry out these instructions. I took my copy of the will and put it in the briefcase I had brought. It weighed barely a few ounces, but it felt like I was carrying the definitive closure of an entire chapter of my existence. Thank you, Robert, for everything. One last thing, Eli, he said as I rose to leave. This document is legally sound, but if you ever decide to modify it, you can. Wills aren't final until I'm dead, I completed with a sad smile. I know, but I won't be modifying it. I left the notary's office at 11:30 in the morning. The winter sun illuminated the narrow streets of the old 4th Ward. Tourists strolled by, taking pictures of the historic facades. A young couple kissed near the church. The world kept turning, completely oblivious to the personal earthquake I had just executed. I walked aimlessly for an hour, processing what I had done. I felt no guilt. I felt no regret. I felt something much deeper and more liberating. I felt that I had finally reclaimed myself. I went into a small coffee shop near the park and ordered an Americano. While waiting, I pulled out my phone. I turned it on for the first time in 4 days. 92 unread messages, 37 missed calls, voicemails I wouldn't listen to. Instead of checking any of that, I opened the browser and returned to the flight page I had visited days ago. The ticket to Bangkok for January 15th was still available. This time, I didn't hesitate for 5 seconds. I bought the ticket. Economy class, one way, $840 charged to my personal card. Purchase confirmation. Flight IB254 Atlanta to Bangkok via Madrid, January 15th, 2025. Departure at 6:40 a.m. I stared at the confirmation on my phone screen for a full minute. 64 years old. My entire adult life dedicated to building a firm, raising a daughter, fulfilling obligations. And now, for the first time since I was 25, I was going to do something completely by me and for me. The waiter brought my Americano. I gave him a generous tip and left the cafe feeling lighter than I had in decades. I spent the last week of December preparing for my departure. I sold furniture I wouldn't need. I donated books to public libraries. I canceled subscriptions and services. Each action was one step closer to the freedom I had chosen. January 1st, 2025, dawned cold and cloudy. I made coffee while looking out the window at the empty streets after the New Year's celebrations. I hadn't gone to any party, hadn't toasted with anyone. I had simply had dinner alone, read a book, and fallen asleep at 11 at night. At 9 in the morning, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman about 55, with her brown hair pulled back and a worried expression. It took me a moment to recognize her. Sharon Hayes, Lena's younger sister, Naomi's aunt. I opened the door cautiously. Sharon. Eli, she said flatly. We need to talk. Can I come in? I let her enter. Sharon and I had never been close after Lena's death. She lived in Miami with her husband, and we saw each other maybe twice a year at obligatory family gatherings. But now, she was here in my living room, looking at me with a mixture of concern and something that looked like anger. Naomi came to see me 3 days ago. She began without sitting down, asking for $50,000, borrowed. And did you give it to her? I asked with genuine curiosity. Of course not, Sharon replied with indignation. I asked her what she needed that amount for. And you know what she told me? That you had cut off all her financial support without reason, that you had canceled cards, accounts, transfers, everything, that you were being cruel and vindictive. I sat on the svi and motioned for her to do the same. And you believed her? Sharon finally sat down, but on the edge of the armchair, tense, not fully relaxing. I've known Naomi since she was born. I've seen her manipulate situations since she was a child to get what she wants. So, I called my cousin, Mia, who is friends with Walter Jenkins. Mia told me a very different version of events. What exactly did she tell you? I asked calmly. That Naomi spent over $300,000 of your money without permission. That she used it to finance her in-laws' lifestyle for almost a year. That when you confronted her, she told you they were her real family, and you weren't. Sharon looked at me directly. Is every word true? Sharon closed her eyes and sighed deeply. My God, Eli, I had no idea. Naomi never mentioned any of this. She just cried, saying you were unfair, that you were always controlling with money, that you never valued her. I worked 16 hours a day for years to give her everything Lena would have wanted her to have, I said in a calm voice. I paid for private school, college, her wedding, the down payment on her condo. I transferred $20,000 a month to her since she got married. And when I discovered she was systematically robbing me, she called me stingy. Sharon put her hands to her face. I can't believe she did that. Lena would be devastated. That's why I made the decisions I made, I explained. Not out of revenge, out of self-respect. I told her I wouldn't lend her a dime, Sharon continued. I told her that if she really needed money,
she should get a job like any 32-year-old. You know what she answered? That she had never had to work because you always covered everything. And now? She didn't know how to start. Those words hit me with unexpected force. Naomi had never worked a day in her life. After graduating from Emory in 2015, she had gotten a symbolic position at a friend's art gallery, 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, earning $800 a month that she spent entirely on clothes. The rest of her expenses were all covered by me. Does Jackson work? I asked. Supposedly at his father's firm, but Mia did some digging. Apparently, Wally has him on the payroll. But Jackson goes to the office 2 or 3 times a week at most. His salary is $2,800 a month. Between him and Naomi, they barely scraped together $4,600 in real income. Their condo had a $1,200 mortgage. Basic expenses, electricity, water, internet, HOA fees, easily totaled another $800. Food, transportation, car insurance, another $700. They were already at $2,700 without including any luxuries, outings, clothes, restaurants, travel. They can't support themselves, I said out loud, finally grasping the magnitude of the financial disaster looming for them. No, Sharon confirmed. And now that the Millers have discovered that your money is no longer flowing, they are distancing themselves too. What do you mean? Sharon pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of conversations. My niece, Kendall, is friends with Jackson's cousin. Look what she wrote to her 2 days ago. I read the messages with growing astonishment. Jackson's cousin, a girl named Kendall, wrote, "My aunt and uncle, Wally and Veronica, are furious with Naomi. They say she tricked them into believing her dad was a generous millionaire, when in reality, he was a regular guy Naomi was stealing from. They feel humiliated because now their whole social circle knows their luxury vacation to Paris was paid for with stolen money. They aren't inviting Naomi and Jackson to family gatherings anymore. The Millers abandoned her," I murmured in disbelief. "Her real family abandoned her as soon as she stopped being financially useful." "Exactly," Sharon said bitterly. "And the entire Hayes family, Lena's family, is outraged at Naomi. My mother, Naomi's grandmother, found out 2 days ago and cried for hours. She said her granddaughter had dishonored Lena's memory." I remained silent, processing all this information. I hadn't sought revenge. I hadn't planned to socially destroy Naomi. I had simply cut off my financial support and let the natural consequences of her actions unfold. But those consequences were proving more devastating than I imagined. "What are you going to do now?" Sharon asked softly. "I'm going to Bangkok on January 15th, I replied calmly. "I'm going to teach English and Spanish to kids who truly need it. I'm going to live for the first time in decades without carrying the burden of obligations that were never appreciated." Sharon nodded slowly. "Eli, I know Naomi hurt you terribly, but she is still Lena's daughter. Lena's daughter died when she decided that 300 wealthy strangers were more important than the father who raised her alone," I replied, with a firm voice, but without anger. "The woman who came to your house asking for $50,000 is not the girl you knew. She is someone I no longer recognize." Sharon stood up to leave. At the door, she stopped. "Just so you know, I told Naomi exactly what I thought. I told her she had betrayed everything Lena stood for, that if her mother could see her now, she would be ashamed. Naomi cried, but she didn't apologize. She just kept insisting that you were the problem." After Sharon left, I sat on my balcony looking at the city. Somewhere in Atlanta, Naomi and Jackson were facing a complete financial collapse. The Millers had rejected them. The extended family was judging them, and they had absolutely no safety net because, for 32 years, that net had been me. For the first time, I felt something akin to sadness. Not for me, but for Naomi, for the life she had destroyed herself. On January 15th, 2025, I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, not because of the alarm, but because my body knew something fundamental was changing. I made the last toffee in my condo. I looked at the streets of Atlanta one last time from my balcony and closed the door with a feeling of finality that was not painful, but liberating. Wally drove me to the airport. We barely talked during the ride. He understood that some goodbyes require silence. At the departures terminal, he hugged me tightly. "Take care, Eli. And call me when you need anything at all. Thank you, Wally, for everything, for 40 years of real friendship." I went through security carrying only 2 suitcases. Everything I owned now fit into 120 kilograms of luggage. The rest I had sold, donated, or left in storage. I felt like I should be scared. A 64-year-old man traveling alone to an unknown continent with no return date. But I only felt excitement. The flight to Bangkok via Madrid lasted 14 hours with the layover. I spent that time reading a guide to Thailand I had bought, studying basic Thai phrases, and looking out the window as the plane crossed over countries I had never visited. France, Italy, Greece, Turkey, India. I landed at Suvarnabhumi Airport in Bangkok on January 16th at 7 o'clock in the morning local time. The humid heat hit me as soon as I stepped out of the air-conditioned plane. 91 degrees Fahrenheit at 7 in the morning. Everything smelled different. Incense, spicy food, tropical flowers, dense humidity. I had booked a week at a budget hostel in the Salam district while I got oriented. $7 a night. The room was tiny, barely 55 square feet, with a single bed and a noisy ceiling fan. The shared bathroom was down the hall. It was perfect. The first 3 days, I simply walked. Bangkok was chaotic, noisy, overwhelming, and absolutely fascinating. Golden temples gleaming under the relentless sun. Floating markets where vendors in small boats offered fruits I had never seen. Tuk-tuks dodging impossible traffic, people constantly smiling despite the suffocating heat. One afternoon on Khao San Road, the backpacker street, I saw a bulletin board with job and volunteer opportunities. There were dozens. Teaching English in rural schools, helping at elephant sanctuaries, working in hostels in exchange for accommodation. One card, in particular, caught my attention. Volunteers needed to teach English and Spanish at Buddhist orphanage in Chiang Mai. Accommodation and meals included. I tore off the card and called the number that same afternoon. A Thai woman named Somsri explained in basic English that the Bon Doi orphanage housed 40 children aged 5 to 17. They needed volunteer teachers for language classes that would help the children get better jobs in the future. "When can you start?" Somsri asked directly. "How about in 3 days?" I replied without thinking. On January 19th, I took an overnight train to Chiang Mai, a city in northern Thailand surrounded by green mountains and ancient temples. The orphanage was 30 minutes from the center in a semi-rural area where rice fields met traditional wooden houses. Bon Doi was a modest complex, 3 two-story buildings painted pale yellow, a central courtyard with a Buddha statue, and a small garden where the children grew vegetables. Somsri greeted me with a traditional Y, hands together in front of her chest. "Welcome, Kun Eli. The children are very excited." I was assigned a simple room in the teacher's building. Single bed, desk, wardrobe, windows overlooking the rice paddies. It was more than I needed. Classes would start the next day.
I could barely sleep that first night. Not from anxiety, but from anticipation. At 64, I was about to start something completely new. Something that had nothing to do with businesses, consulting, family obligations, or external expectations. My first class was with a group of 10 children, 8 to 12 years old. They entered timidly, barefoot, as was the custom, and sat in a circle on the wooden floor. They looked at me with curiosity mixed with a reverent fear toward any foreign adult. "Sawasdee Crab," I said, attempting the Thai greeting. "My name is Eli. I come from America." A small girl about 9 years old with 2 pigtails timidly raised her hand. "America? Like basketball?" she asked in broken English. "Yes, like the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks." All the children started talking excitedly. Basketball was a universal language that transcended cultural barriers. We spent the first hour simply playing with English and Spanish words related to sports. Ball, pelota, goal, goal, tistim, kiwipo. Something happened in that simple room with barefoot children, awkwardly repeating words. I felt a profound peace I hadn't experienced in years. These children weren't asking me for anything except my time and knowledge. There were no hidden expectations, subtle manipulations, or selfish agendas. Only pure gratitude for the opportunity to learn. Over the next 3 months, I established a routine that healed something broken inside me. Waking up at 6 with the sound of temple bells, eating sticky rice breakfast with the monks who visited the orphanage, teaching 4 two-hour classes daily, lunch with the children, sharing stories, afternoons helping with homework, playing soccer barefoot in the courtyard, or just sitting under the mango trees talking. The children adopted me in unexpected ways. They called me Ajarn Eli, Professor Eli, with genuine respect. The pigtail girl, whose name was Nong Ploy, started waiting for me every morning with a new drawing. A 14-year-old boy named Chai asked me to tell him stories about America during breaks. One afternoon, Samsri found me sitting alone in the garden, watching the sunset over the rice fields. She sat beside me in silence for several minutes before speaking. "Kun Eli, the children love you very much. You are different from other volunteers. They feel that you really care." "I care more than I thought possible," I admitted, my voice hoarse. "These children have given me more in 3 months than many other people in my whole life." Samsri nodded wisely. "Sometimes we find our real family in the most unexpected places." Her words resonated deeply. Real family. Naomi had used that term to refer to the Millers, but now I understood its true meaning. Family wasn't blood or obligation. Family was mutual choice, genuine respect, love, that asked for nothing in return, except presence. In late March 2025, Samsri mentioned something that would change the course of the next few months of my life. Kun Ili. There is a Vipassana meditation retreat in Ubud, Bali. 30 days of silence, deep reflection, inner healing. I think it would benefit you greatly. The idea of 30 days in complete silence would have terrified me 6 months ago. But now, after 3 months teaching children who had shown me the real meaning of unconditional gratitude, I felt ready for the next level of personal transformation. On April 5th, I flew to Bali. The Dharmapala Meditation Center was hidden among terraced rice paddies and dense tropical jungle, 40 minutes from Ubud. It was a complex of traditional Balinese huts called Bale, built with bamboo and thatched roofs. 50 participants from around the world, Germans, Australians, Japanese, Brazilians, and several Americans. The rules were strict. No talking, no eye contact, no phones, no books, no music, only meditation, simple vegetarian food, and observing one's own thoughts for 8 hours daily. I handed over my phone on the first day without hesitation. I hadn't really used it since leaving the States, except for occasional calls to Wally. The first 5 days were brutally difficult. My mind, accustomed to decades of constant activity, rebelled against the silence. Thoughts about Naomi surfaced uncontrollably. Memories of Lena, obsessive analysis of past decisions. But gradually, with the guidance of the meditation teachers, I learned to observe those thoughts without clinging to them, like clouds passing across the sky. On the 13th day, during the silent meal in the communal dining hall, I noticed a woman sitting alone near the window. Gray hair cut in a modern bob style, about 60 years old. Serene face, but with lines that suggested overcome suffering. She was wearing a white linen blouse and beige pants. Something about her posture, the way she held her cutlery, felt strangely familiar. On day 21 of the retreat, the period of noble silence ended. We could talk during meals and breaks. That afternoon, in the central garden, the woman I had noted approached me with a cup of ginger tea. "Excuse the intrusion," she said in perfect English, with an easygoing Southern accent. "But I heard you speaking English with one of the coordinators. I'm Ava Thompson, from Miami." "Elijah Hayes, Atlanta," I replied, surprised to hear a familiar accent after weeks. "It's a pleasure." We sat under a plumeria tree talking about our journeys so far. Ava had sold her pharmacy in Miami 6 months ago after her 2 adult sons tried to force her to give them money for dubious investments. When she refused, they accused her of being selfish and cut off contact completely. "I worked 35 years building that business," she told me in a calm but firm voice. "My husband died of a heart attack when the boys were 12 and 14. I raised them alone, paid for private college, helped them with their first businesses. And when I finally said no to an unreasonable request, I discovered they only wanted me for my money." The similarity to my own story was chilling. Over the next few days, Ava and I spent more and more time together. Walks through the rice paddies, talking about ungrateful children, unacknowledged sacrifices, and the painful but necessary process of letting go. One afternoon, while watching the sunset from the temple on the hill, Ava mentioned something that sparked my dormant professional curiosity. "I've been researching organizations that work with vulnerable children in Southeast Asia. I want to use some of the money from my pharmacy sale for something meaningful. I don't want to die knowing I only worked to enrich ungrateful children." "What kind of project do you have in mind?" I asked. "A school," she replied, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "A free school for children from poor communities in Cambodia. Real quality education. Not just superficial charity, with well-paid teachers, adequate materials, and long-term follow-up." Something inside me ignited. "I have experience in management consulting. You might need help structuring the project, managing budgets, establishing sustainable processes." Ava looked at me intensely. "Would you be interested in working with me on this?" "More than I thought possible," I answered honestly. We spent the last 9 days of the retreat planning. Ava had $300,000 from the sale of her pharmacy available for initial investment. I had business knowledge and recent experience teaching at an orphanage. Together, we researched potential locations in Cambodia, construction costs, legal requirements, and sustainability models. Siem Reap, Ava suggested one afternoon, near Angkor Wat, but in the surrounding rural communities where education is almost non-existent. "We could start with 50 students," I added, making mental calculations. "Expand gradually, based on resources and demand. Focus on English, basic math, and practical skills." When the retreat ended on May 5th, Ava and I flew together to Siem Reap to scout the land. During that 2-week research trip, something else blossomed between us. It wasn't the passionate romance of youth. It was something deeper. companionship between two people who had been betrayed by biological family and were now choosing to build a shared purpose. One evening, dining at a small restaurant by the river, Ava took my hand across the table. "Eli, I know we've only known each other for a month, but I feel like I understand you in ways few people could. We've lived similar versions of the same pain." "I feel the same way," I admitted, squeezing her hand. "For the first time in decades, I don't feel alone in my experience." During those weeks in Cambodia, I discovered that my phone, stored in my backpack, had intermittent signal. One afternoon, while Ava was negotiating the price of land with local owners, I turned the device on out of curiosity. 12 emails from Naomi. The titles were progressively more desperate. "Dad, please answer. We need to talk. I beg you. At least tell me you're okay." The last one was dated 2 weeks ago. "I'm sorry for everything. Please, come back." I deleted them all, without opening them. Not out of cruelty, but because I had finally understood something fundamental. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. I could forgive Naomi for my own inner peace, without needing to restore a relationship that she herself had destroyed. Ava noticed my expression when she returned. "Bad news?" "No," I replied, putting the phone away. "Just final goodbyes to a past that no longer belongs to me." December 2025. Exactly 1 year since I discovered Naomi's betrayal. But that anniversary no longer hurts. I'm sitting on the terrace of my small apartment in St. Petersburg, Florida, watching the Gulf of Mexico shine under the winter sun as I write these words. The Hayes Thompson Foundation opened its doors in September 2025 on the outskirts of Siem Reap. We built 3 spacious classrooms, a library, a communal dining hall, and housing for teachers. Ava handled all of the administrative aspects with an efficiency that only comes from decades of managing a successful business. I designed the educational program using my experience in Chiang Mai. We currently serve 230 children from rural Cambodian communities. We teach them English, Spanish, math, basic computer skills, and practical trades like carpentry and sustainable agriculture. Everything is completely free. Local teachers receive decent salaries of $650 a month, 3 times the national average. It's a sustainable model that will change lives for generations. I sold my consulting firm in Atlanta last July for $1.7 million. I invested $1.2 million in the foundation, creating an endowment fund that will generate perpetual income. The remaining $500,000 allows me to live modestly but comfortably, dividing my time between the States and Cambodia. I bought this 600 square foot apartment in St. Petersburg for $300,000. It's small, simple, perfect. 2 rooms, a balcony with a sea view, a 15-minute walk from the central market. I spend 6 months here handling the legal and financial aspects of the foundation, then 6 months in Cambodia working directly with the children. Ava lives in a similar apartment 2 blocks away. Our relationship is difficult to define by conventional standards. We don't live together. We don't talk about marriage. We are simply partners who chose to build something meaningful while enjoying each other's company. We have dinner together 4 nights a week. We travel together. We work together. It is more than enough. Last week, Wally came to visit me from Atlanta. He brought news about Naomi that I hadn't asked for but listened to without particular emotion. "She's working," he informed me as we drank coffee on my balcony. "Administrative secretary at an insurance office. $1,800 a month. Jackson finally got a real job at an auditing firm. $2,800 a month." I did the math mentally. $4,600 a month between them, less than what I used to transfer to Naomi alone monthly. How are they managing? They had to move, Wally continued. They sold the Buckhead condo. With the profits, they paid off accumulated debts and bought a 550 square foot apartment in South Fulton County. $1,200 mortgage. South Fulton County, a working-class suburb of Atlanta, completely different from the luxury of Buckhead, where she had lived. And the Millers? They cut off contact completely last year. Veronica apparently said at a family dinner that Naomi had used and humiliated them. They haven't spoken since. I felt a pang of something that wasn't exactly satisfaction, but wasn't sadness either. Just a kind of natural justice unfolding. Has Naomi asked about me? Wally looked at me carefully before answering. She mentioned to Sharon 2 months ago that she understands now what she did. That working 8 hours a day, counting every dollar, worrying about bills, it's given her perspective on everything you did for decades. But she's too proud to try to contact you directly. Good, I replied calmly. Because even though I have forgiven her internally, I have no interest in restoring what she destroyed. Wally nodded understandingly. Your will is still intact. 70% for the Widowed Parent Support Network, 30% for the Lena Hayes Memorial Scholarship Fund. Naomi will only receive her mother's jewelry. Perfect. Let it remain that way. After Wally left, I reflected on the past year. 64 to 65 years old. For many, the age of passive retirement, waiting for the end. For me, the beginning of the most authentic life I ever imagined possible. Yesterday I received photos from Cambodia via email. Nong Ploy, the Thai girl who used to wait for me with the drawings. She is now 10 years old and learning Spanish with contagious enthusiasm. She wrote in her last message, Ajarn Eli, when I grow up, I want to help children like you helped me. That message is worth more than all the years I invested in Naomi, waiting for reciprocity that never came. Ava and I plan to expand the foundation to Vietnam next year. She has tireless energy for this. I have accumulated experience and connections. Together, we form an extraordinary team, building a real legacy. Not of blood, but of measurable impact on vulnerable lives. Sometimes I think of Lena. I wonder what she would say, seeing my life now. I think she would be proud, not of the distance from Naomi, that would have saddened her, but that I finally chose to live for myself, that I transformed pain into purpose, that I found a true family in unexpected places. Naomi will have to live the rest of her existence knowing that she rejected unconditional love for temporary financial comfort. She will work every day, earning in a month what she used to spend on a single dinner. She will raise children without the economic support of the grandfather she scorned. She will grow old, remembering that she had a father, willing to give everything, and traded him for people who abandoned her as soon as she stopped being useful. Those are her consequences. I didn't impose them. She chose them. I, on the other hand, wake up every morning with renewed purpose. I watch the sun rise over the Gulf from my small but mine balcony. I read emails from Cambodian children progressing academically. I have dinner with Ava, sharing modest wines and deep conversations. I plan the next educational project. I travel freely, without carrying the weight of toxic obligations. This year, I learned that it's never too late to reclaim self-respect. That real family is built on mutual respect, not shared DNA. That sacrifices are only worthwhile when they are genuinely appreciated. That letting go is not failure, but necessary liberation. I am 65 years old. Better physical and mental health than in the last decade. Clear purpose, calm love, deep peace. A significant legacy under construction. Naomi is 33, Finally, learning lessons. She should have learned a decade ago. Late, but necessary. I feel no revenge. I feel no anger. I only feel immense gratitude, because her betrayal forced me to let go of a life I lived for others and build a life authentically mine. And that, paradoxically, is the best gift she inadvertently gave me. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.